This weekend saw the release of Deadpool and Wolverine, this year's only theatrically released entry in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Now, I'm recording this well in advance of that weekend, but according to my estimates, the film is projected to make approximately all of the money.
Disney brought him back. They're going to make him do this till he's 90.
However, it's also notable as a big nostalgia play for a whole bunch of stuff that has no prior association with the larger Marvel or even Disney brands. For years, it has been accepted wisdom online that 20th Century Fox has catastrophically mismanaged the X-Men characters that they licensed from Marvel, and that the acquisition of Fox by Disney would offer a clean slate whereby Marvel Studios could finally do justice to these iconic characters. So it is, to be frank, a little strange that Disney's biggest live-action movie of the year is betting so heavily on nostalgia for an era that fans claim to hate, with the bulk of the movie's marketing built around the return of iconic characters like Daphne Keene's Lara, Pyro, I guess. And hey, it's the Sabretooth who wasn't Liev Schreiber.
When are you gonna figure it out? We're not like them.
And this comes in the wake of years of Marvel projects making big deals of cameos from Fox actors like Patrick Stewart, Kelsey Grammer, and Evan Peters. So this week we're going to talk about how Disney found itself here, the irony of mining nostalgia for a brand that the company spent years marketing as a failure, and what that says about where we are as a culture. Now, this is not a review show, so we're not really going to get into subjective opinions about the relative quality of various films. And there won't be spoilers for Deadpool and Wolverine, outside of what Disney has seen fit to include in the marketing. With that in mind, let's dip our toes in the Deadpool. We're going to be talking a lot about Disney today. If we're going to do that, it's important to understand that, like every other major studio, Disney is a company that has its own unique sensibility and approach to movie making. More than the other major studios, like Warner's or Universal, Disney's in the intellectual property game. In its earnings report for 2023, the company's entertainment division, which includes the film studio, streaming, and linear networks, accounted for 44% of the company's revenue, but only 8% of its income. In contrast, the company's experiences division, which includes theme parks and cruises, has been a major driver for the studio. Disney's planning to invest $60 billion in its experience segment over the next decade, hoping to turbocharge it with the application of intellectual property.
I'm thrilled to announce the next chapter in the long and exciting history between Disney Parks and Star Wars.
So Disney is less specifically interested in making good movies than it is in harvesting intellectual property that can exploit across multiple divisions of the larger company. This may explain why Disney's movies generally operate within a relatively narrow band. And let's face it, Disney are very good at this. There's a reason why, with all due respect to the Dark Universe, the DC Extended Universe, the Transformers verse, the Fast and Furious verse, the Bloodshot verse, and countless others, that Disney has been the only major studio to successfully launch an expansive shared universe. No, really, the second most successful shared universe in Hollywood is probably the Conjuring verse over at Warner Brothers. Disney's model is tailor-made to ensure a standardized product. In terms of output, Disney operates on the logic of a low ceiling and a high floor. There are reports of directors being told that the action scenes in their movies will be handled by the studio's in-house team, and it's common for the studio to pre-visualize scenes years before they're shot. There's a reason why the Russo brothers can make something like Infinity War or Endgame at Marvel, and when they're left to their own devices, choose to frame a shot from the point of view of Tom Holland's asshole. It's important to stress that this is an approach that has worked reasonably well for Disney, at least for the most part, although we will inevitably circle back to that point in a moment. At the same time, there are limitations to this approach. For example, Disney is the only one of the big five studios to have never won a Best Picture Oscar, because that's not what the company's priorities are.
1 million, 2 million, 3 million, 4!
The company doesn't make a particularly diverse slate of films. In 2003, for example, Pirates of the Caribbean became the first Disney-branded movie rated PG-13, nearly 2 decades after that rating was first introduced. If you look at the D23 website, The last R-rated film to be theatrically released by Disney before Deadpool and Wolverine was The Fifth Estate, which released under the Touchstone brand in 2013. Before that, it was Fright Night in 2011. Before that, it was Miracle at St. Anna in 2008. There are exceptions, of course, under the Searchlight brand, such as The First Omen or Alien Romulus, but those are grandfathered in. Like Deadpool and Wolverine, they are sequels to movies that Disney never would have made in the first place, but which are too profitable to avoid making now. This gets at something that Disney simply isn't very good at: innovation. For the past couple of decades, Disney's strategy towards innovation has been to find studios that are doing successful and innovative things, like Marvel Studios, Lucasfilm, and Pixar, and then buy them. This is almost immediately followed by a push to exploit the existing brands established by these studios during the period of their independence, and mercilessly exploit the intellectual property.
I'm not gonna do it, you're not gonna make me do it. I don't care how much they paid.
You put on that nose and ears or I'll take off yours.
This is a limitation of the Disney model. In order to offer more of the same, there has to be something to copy. Otherwise, you end up with what might be best described as a multiplicity situation. A copy of a copy of a copy inevitably fades over time. As Disney returns to familiar franchises and brands over and over and over again, it's inevitable that fans and audiences will tire of the same things in the same combinations again and again and again. We've used the term cultural fracking before in the backdrop, and it really applies here. The goal isn't to ensure that Star Wars remains a sustainable brand over the next 20 or 30 years. It's to return maximum shareholder value in the next financial quarter.
My trick's gonna work, gonna make all the money.
It's notable that we've seen a series of diminishing returns around established Disney brands like Marvel or Star Wars in recent years, because things that were once new and interesting have been milked for all possible value. They now seem tired and fatigued. This is why there's so much excitement for Deadpool and Wolverine. If the film offers little actually new, it at least offers a fresh source of nostalgia. It's designed to remind audiences of things that haven't been ruthlessly and mercilessly exploited for nostalgia yet, and which exist in the sweet spot to appeal to audiences in that sweet 18 to 34 demographic. It's the same logic that explains the success of Spider-Man No Way Home, another project within the MCU that was nostalgic for projects outside the MCU. And again, although that is a Sony project, the projects that it was nostalgic for were projects that Disney never would have made in the first place.
Now dig on this.
This gets at something interesting. To put it frankly, Disney needs other studios to provide the raw material to sustain its current business model. The quality of Fox's X-Men output was, I guess, variable would be the polite way to put it.
Did you just call me Blob?
There was a lot of really bad stuff in there. And while the relationship of this fact to the content of the movie is the subject of a much more involved and complicated video than we have time to go into now, it is also an issue that the first two X-Men movies were made by a guy that you couldn't leave alone in a room with a teenager. Although we should also acknowledge the same is true of the first two Avengers movies. However, Fox also took chances that Disney would never tolerate within its existing brands.
Whose balls did I have to fondle to get my very own movie? I can't tell you, but it does rhyme with Pulverine.
The two Deadpool movies, for example, would never have been made by Disney, which means that there'd be no Deadpool and Wolverine to help pull Disney out of the doldrums. They were essentially retro 80s action movies with a postmodern sheen. Hell, Deadpool 2 is arguably best understood as a throwback to those action movies, though pair stars like Stallone or Schwarzenegger with an annoying kid sidekick in order to prove their viability to a family audience. Deadpool 2 makes sense in the larger context of the filmography of David Leitch, a companion to the 80s nostalgia that informs his other work like Atomic Blonde or The Fall Guy. Marvel's other big hit of the year, X-Men '97, is an update to a Fox Kids show. And hell, to step back from Fox, the nostalgia that is driving Marvel's much-troubled Blade movie is more firmly rooted in the New Line Cinema adaptations than in the old Tomb of Dracula comic.
Some motherfuckers are always trying to ice skate uphill.
Even setting aside the profit motive underpinning this, the companies that license content from Marvel are often doing more interesting stuff than Disney. So in 2018, Logan became the first superhero movie to be nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay, a year before Joker and Black Panther were nominated for Best Picture. Legion remains the most visually interesting live-action Marvel television show, and a clear influence on Marvel's actual live-action shows like WandaVision, Loki, Moon Knight, and Echo. Even outside of Fox, Marvel has yet to produce anything as dynamic as the recent Spider-Verse movies. And sure, we said we weren't going to get into debates about quality, but the counterpoint to all this would be that the companies have made lots of terrible adaptations. And that is certainly true.
When you take on the responsibility, great power will come.
But the truth is that you don't have to watch X-Men Apocalypse if you don't want to, but you can watch Into the Spider-Verse as many times as you want. Personally, I'm unlikely to ever voluntarily stick on The Amazing Spider-Man, but Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2 is a movie I've gone back to more than any other Marvel film.
Everybody loves a hero. People line up for him, cheer them, scream their names.
This larger context gets lost in discussions of Disney's market dominance. As much as fan sites might cheer that Marvel finally has the rights to the X-Men, and that Wolverine is finally wearing that yellow costume, Disney's acquisition of Fox gave the studio control of 40% of the theatrical market. Even the parts of Fox that retained their identity, like Searchlight, were effectively reduced to the home of low-budget awards fare like the Banshees of Inisherin, streaming content like The Boston Strangler or Rosalind, or theatrical nostalgia plays for Fox IPs like Alien Romulus or The First Omen. It's probably not a great sign for the sustainability of the industry, or even the quality of the content, when almost half of the market belongs to a studio whose biggest live-action summer release finds it playing in the graveyard of a competitor that it bought half a decade ago, and which it has hollowed out into a collection of empty signifiers and familiar iconography. It feels like we're all swimming in the dead pool. I've been Darren Mooney, and this was The Backdrop.
If you've been enjoying our work for the past 6 months and want to help make sure we're sustainable for the long haul, joining us over on Patreon is the best way to make that happen. You can get a ton of great perks like ad-free podcasts, some written columns from Darren Mooney and occasionally other writers, merch discounts, monthly movie nights, voting for the Game Yahtzee reviews during the summer game drought, and more. Your support so far has allowed us to continue bringing you the content you enjoy unimpeded, and we look forward to doing so for many more years to come. We release our financials publicly to you once a quarter so you can see how the business is doing and where your money is going. You can view our latest report for Q2 over on Patreon, the YouTube community tab, Twitter, or our Discord. Along with all the series, streams, and podcasts you've come to love, we have a lot of exciting things on the horizon. Be on the lookout for our new entertainment podcast, The Rewind, Marty's new retro show, The Archive, our upcoming Animal Well documentary, and the next big video from Good Blood, Metal Gear Untold. All coming soon to Second Wind.